what is Xiaomi? Xiaomi is Dyson, Apple, and Tesla together.
Hello and welcome to the Auto Ethnographer. I'm John Stech, your host on this journey. We travel the globe to bring you stories about culture and the global automotive industry. Fasten your seatbelt and let's get started. Hello and welcome to the Auto Ethnographer. On this episode this week, we have a very interesting guest coming in from Italy. We have Gianfranco Pizzuto. He is the founder and CEO of Automobili Estrema. This is a very exciting show because we have a very big and interesting background with regards to electrification and the auto industry across a number of different countries where Gianfranco has been operating his business. Gianfranco is an entrepreneur. He's a real go-getter with a passion for the auto industry, especially for performance vehicles and electrification. He has a knack for identifying trends and then fusing cutting-edge technology together with real-world applications. 5 years ago, he founded Automobili Estrema. This is an electric hypercar company based in Modena, Italy, the heart of Italian supercars. The Fulminea, which translates as lightning fast, is beautiful. You need to see it, and I'll try to put a link to the vehicle in the podcast. This company was born out of a separate venture, Scuderia E, which adapted Fiat 500e vehicles from the American market to the European market with different specifications. He was also the first investor of the original Fisker Automotive, the EV company that was born in the early 2000s and unfortunately found its demise in 2013 following a bankruptcy. He also started his career with some slightly, let's say, slower products. These were mostly in the agriculture and construction business, as well as forestry, attachments on tractors. Of course, now his life is much more fast as he is developing this electric hypercar. With that, I'd love to give the floor over to Gianfranco. Welcome to the Auto Ethnographer, and I look forward to our conversation today.
Thank you very much, John, for the kind invite, and I really appreciate all the background that you just listed. And it's a 40 years journey that I have in the industry, and not like you were mentioning in the ag sector with tractors. But that's nothing really new because somebody else before me did something similar, which is a renowned name in the Italian automotive sports car history, Mr. Lamborghini, Mr. Ferruccio Lamborghini. So he also started the business with tractors, actually. So, and I think it's similar. I didn't buy a Ferrari to then turn into Fulminea like it happened to Mr. Lamborghini, that he was pretty upset with the performance of his Ferrari, and that's the reason why then, after arguing with Enzo Ferrari, he decided to do his own supercar. So in my case, it was simply a dream I had since I was a little kid, that I wanted to do something with cars. Okay, I didn't know when I was little, of course, what was expecting then once I was getting a little bit older. And yes, and in 2007, I had the chance to actually sell my business to my other partners. And with the capital, with a part of the capital I was getting, I decided to invest with Henrik Fisker's idea of this electric plug-in, by the time, sport car, which was the Fisker Karma. And by the time I also lived in the US, I was based in Atlanta, Georgia, because my previous company had the US and North America operation in Atlanta. Atlanta is pretty big with ag companies. And of course, there is a lot of, by the time after the Olympic Games. Atlanta was a booming city, and a lot of construction going on. And so I realized that the machine that we had designed in Italy could also work in the construction business. And actually, the agent I had there, because initially, before having the headquarters, I had an agent that was working for us on a commission base. And with this agent, he said, in Europe, you use the mechanical PTO shaft attached to a tractor. But here in US, we like to do all hydraulic, all with the skid steer loaders. And so he said, okay, let's try to apply your machine to the skid steer loaders and have instead of a mechanical drive shaft, have a pump and a motor, and run it hydraulically. And so we started the US operation out of the intuition of the agent we had back then, and we became really very, very successful. We became so successful that Caterpillar asked to produce these machines for them as well. But one of the conditions were that we would have to be in US, closer to the North American market, because time difference, the distance and everything was a little bit compromising for them. And so I decided to move all my family. I remember the day where I went into the meeting with my other two business partners, and I said, "Hey, Caterpillar is going to order 500, at least 500 units every year of this model here for the attachments." And they said, "Okay, who is going to the US?" And I said, "I'm going." And they say, "Seriously?" I said, "Yeah, why not?" So I moved there with my family. By the time I had only the first two kids, the third came later. And so my wife and I and the two kids went to Atlanta, and we picked a home, and we built up this fantastic company, which is existing still today. And by the way, the guy that I took when I decided to leave the company, the guy I took is still there managing the company. So it's makes me very proud about also having made the right choice, that the company that I left was continuing to be successful, and it is a very successful company in its field. So with this selling of my stock to my other partners, I had this amount of money, and I said, okay. I told my wife I want to do a car. I'm looking to first of all, I was thinking about do a car just by myself with some of the people I knew. And then I was reading a German magazine, a German car magazine, which is very, very famous in Germany. And because you are half German, John, I guess you know Auto, Motor und Sport, which is, I think one of the top magazines in Europe in general, but of course in Germany. And because I do speak German, my wife is German, and I'm growing up, or I was growing up in an era in Italy where it was belonging to the Austrian Empire once. So we still speak German and Italian here, and therefore I'm completely bilingual. And that's the reason why I bought Automotive Sport. And there was an article about Henrik Fisker leaving Aston Martin and having his own company, which by the time was Fisker Coach Build. So he was like a coach builder. And I said, I said to my wife, I'm going to call this guy. And then I figure out the number on the internet. I called him and I said, I'm here in Atlanta, and I would like to invest in your idea. At least I'm interested. And so I went to Irvine. I took the flight from Atlanta to Orange County Airport, or John Wayne. This airport has a half a dozen names. So I went there, and I met with him and his other partner, Barney Köhler. We went to, it was like, I don't remember, was it Ruth Chris? It was like a steakhouse in Newport Beach. So, and he was taking a napkin, and on a napkin, he designed the karma, basically. With, there are people that have a sense of talent for design, and he for sure has that kind of talent. He's missing a lot of other talents, but he knows how to design. So he was drawing this super sleek car, and he said, and I have a powertrain for the car as well, because that was the thing. You need to have, okay, you know how to do a car, how to design a car, but on what base are you then developing the car? And he said, I have a powertrain. I have a company called Quantum Technologies that is not far away from our location, and they have a plug-in electric powertrain. I had no idea what plug-in hybrid powertrain meant back then, of course. And so we went to Quantum Technology, and they showed me this powertrain, which was by the time fit on a kind of all-wheel drive military kind of vehicle called the Aggressor. Okay, and it had the capability to do 50 miles on electric, so moving silently through the lines to the enemy lines. And then, of course, when the operation was then over, they could recover with a gasoline engine and do then the distance eventually when the battery was empty, right? So this was the powertrain. This was the story, actually, how Fisker Automotive started, with a design on a napkin and an existing powertrain from Quantum Technology that then we decided to become the powertrain for the Fisker Karma, right? And that sparked, of course, my interest, my excitement, and so I decided to invest the first $2 million. So the very very first $2 million that came to the Fisker Automotive, which was just founded, because the actual company was called Fisker Coach Build, where they modified and they did the design services for third parties, for other OEM. And by the way, a lot of people don't know that actually the Fisker, Henrik Fisker, designed the Model S for Elon Musk. And this is why we had then also one of the reasons we had to deal with Elon Musk back then, because he didn't like the fact that we then had our own car. And then he said that basically we were stealing the technology, and that our design was better, that the Fisker Karma looked better than the Model S, and so on and so forth. And we had also a lawsuit, or he initiated a lawsuit against Fisker Automotive, which he lost, by the way. Okay, so that was also my first contact with Elon Musk, the old Elon Musk, not the actual Elon Musk, which seems to be completely somebody else, right? Long story short, we had a lot of hypes at the beginning. We were the new kid on the block. We were much, much more successful than Tesla at the beginning. But then the push that we received from the bigger investors, because I came in with the first $2 million, as I said, but this was by far not enough to complete the whole thing. So at the end, I think more than $1 billion dollars were invested directly, indirectly in the project, and the result was the bankruptcy at the end. There are many, many, many reasons for why that happened, but one of the main reasons, at least this is my opinion, is that the push of the Silicon Valley investors, Kleiner Perkins and all the others that came in, that wanted to rush to go to the stock market and then have their return, of course. That kind of stress, that kind of push was toxic for the project itself. There were other reasons also. A lot of money were wasted, and it was not used in a wise way. A lot of mistakes and errors and so on and so forth. But I think at the end, that the what ultimately was making the project unsuccessful was this kind of pressure we all had to rush to the stock market, so that the big investors, not the little ones like me and others, but the big investors, could get their buck out quickly. and then tenfold, a hundredfold, whatever. And the car was not um, ready to go into production. Um, Still, we started production and we had a series of failures, basically through the battery pack that was another produced by another startup called A123, and they had defect cells. They delivered defect cells so that an interesting number of cars caught on fire because of the leakage of this battery pack, and then it caused shortcuts, and then the whole story with a domino effect that you then have a fire inside a car. So you can imagine this is coming in the moment where you are supposed to be launching the product, and then it backfires, and of course you're not meeting then what is supposed to be the requirement from to get to the stock exchange, to be then a serious company or treated as a serious company. So that was a kind of um, uh, very huge problem that was not able to be solved in time. Uh, if we would have had like another 6 to 12 months time to finish the development of a car, we would today tell completely another story. But that wasn't possible, and that's the problem many times when big investor groups are entering something that they don't know. Um, they expect to be, like a lot of tech companies, Facebook, Google, Apple, and so on and so forth. They don't have to do homologation, crash test, and all that stuff that you have to do when you have a car. And then US market is different from the European market, and then it's different again for China, and so on and so forth. So it's a long process. It's very costly and very time intensive, and also capital intensive. So they thought you just press a button and then the whole thing runs, right? So that was not the case, and so we went into a deadly spiral, which at the end in 2013 brought us to the bankruptcy, Chapter 11 bankruptcy. And then in 2014, it was acquired by a Chinese corporation, which is the Wangshan Group. So the Wangshan Group in February 14, we'll never forget the day, February 14th, 2014, they had a better bid, and then they took the asset of Fisker Automotive and A123, also the battery company, and they decided then to turn the name into Karma Automotive. So they used the model, the name of the model, and transform it into the name of the company. So today the company still exists. It's called Karma Automotive. They do a kind of new edition of the original Fisker Karma, and the new edition is sold in very very low numbers in very limited markets. I don't know much about the situation today of Karma Automotive because I don't belong to the company, or I have nothing to do with the company anymore. What I have, of course, followed was then the rise again, and then the bankruptcy 2.0 of my former partner Henrik Fisker with his Fisker Ocean. And well, I don't want to comment because I think everyone can have his own opinion on what happened. It is just sad because I think the product itself was okay. It was a decent product, good design, and he had the chance really to resurrect somehow his own name in a good way, and it did go, and so it's bankrupt. And unfortunately, every time someone goes bankrupt in the EV world, it hurts me personally, because I still believe that, of course, EV is the way to go, simply. And and then from that day, 2014, I had to see what else can I do in my life. And then I went back to California and I saw all these Fiat 500s, the electric Fiat 500 that Mr. Marchione didn't want because he was losing money on each car that was actually
I
transformed.
think he famously, I I believe he famously said that he loses like $15,000 on every one. That
Yeah,
the fewer he sells, the more money he makes.
yeah, but he didn't say why. He didn't say why. The as I know the product in and out very well, very very well. The reason was that he was retrofitting an ICE version of the Fiat 500 that was made in Mexico in a former Chrysler factory. So you have to think about that from the production line, where you usually do an ICE version, you have then to transform it. So uh, take the engine out and put the electric motor in, etc. And by the way, the cars were produced by a joint venture between Samsung and Bosch. Okay, so Samsung was doing the battery pack, and Bosch was doing the electrification and everything. So the project was born out of initial ICE project, so an internal combustion engine project. So of course, it's going to be very very expensive. And then back then we are talking about 2014 2015, so it's 11 10 10 11 12 years ago. The cost of the battery pack and everything was much much higher than today, and that's the reason why it had a very small battery pack, and it had no fast charging capability. You could only charge at 7.4 kilowatt maximum capacity, and it was not even DC, was AC. So you could basically charge at home, right? And with the limited range, I think the maximum range, if you weren't driving too fast, it was 80, 90 miles, 100 miles in summer, maybe when it's flat and you're not driving too fast, because the battery was like a 24 kilowatt hour battery pack. So 24 kilowatt hour, you cannot expect wonders, of course, with this little energy in the car. And that,
If I may add,
sure.
the Fiat 500, just the concept itself, the size of the vehicle, and the fact that it was electric at that time, it just did not fit into the U.S. market, right?
Yeah, yeah.
It's
I
essentially a
think it
two and
was
a half
it.
seater.
Yeah, exactly. 2.5 seater, right? I think it was just for Marchione back then. It was the cheapest way for the California mandate to avoid to pay penalties. Because what is the option here? Either you pay the penalties because you sell the Maseratis and the Ferraris and so on and so forth, or you do an electric car. And uh, he decided to go the way where the least um, convenient solution from from our what makes sense from an automotive spirit, let's say. He decided to take what was the least investment on making an electric car. He never meant to have this car being successful in terms of sales and revenues. He just did it because he had to do it, right? There was no option. And then later on, a lot of people maybe don't recall, but later on, FCA, because it was not Stellantis. Today they are in the conglomerate called Stellantis. Back then it was FCA, and I wanted Marchione, so I met Marchione a couple of times, and I wanted Marchione to actually buy Fisker, but because I said rather of you turning a Fiat 500 into electric and then pay Tesla for the CO2 credits. By the time FCA was paying like $300 million or even more a year to buy the credits from Tesla, so that they don't pay the fines in the US and in the European community to Brussels. Um, I said, why? And I presented him a plan where, without spending a cent, he could take over Fisker. So that was before Wangxian, before the bankruptcy. It was months before, where I tried to rescue somehow also my investment. And I tried to convince Marchione to take Fisker Automotive. So instead of FCA, so Fiat Chrysler Automobiles, it would be FFCA, so Fiat Fisker Chrysler Automobiles. So I said, let's add an F, and you could take all the technology we have, because we also had made other models that which never made it into production, like the Atlantic, which was a smaller Fisker. Then we had the Surf, which was a station wagon of the Karma, and then we also had a mid-size SUV already designed. So we had a lot of stuff that I said, listen, Mr. Marchione, you could turn, even if you don't like, and you say, okay, I'm not interested in Fisker, the brand, but then you could turn it into a Maserati, or you can turn it into an Alfa Romeo, and then you would have something which is electrified, and which you can little by little transform into a full electric line if you want, with your all other brands. Okay. And I said, you don't even have to spend a dime. My suggestion was that we just exchange stock. Let's presume Fisker Automotive is worth $300 million, and the rest, which is FCA, is worth 3 billion, right? So what is the difference? Okay, so 10% of the stock will go to Fisker Automotive, and 90% of the stock will be you, right? And you own the brand, and you own the technology, and then you decide, let's kill Fisker as a brand. I'm not, I don't need a brand, but let's put the technology into what we have in the other brands, Lancia, Alfa, and Maserati, for instance. Okay, and I was hoping that this would be a win-win situation. Unfortunately, Mr. Marchione was never convinced of the electric car. He was unfortunately, one of the haters. One that said it will never happen, it will never come. 10 years later, 2025 today, everyone has to say that the electric car is here and it's not going away, right?
Correct. Yeah, I think absolutely that FCA, and I did spend a few years working with FCA on the primarily on the Chrysler side, but also working with some of the Fiat products while I was based in Moscow. But they were certainly fairly far behind in terms of developing any kind of electric vehicle platform. There was almost nothing to speak of actually until you got to the era of Stellantis.
Yeah. And this is why I then started to think about, okay, they don't want the car to come to Europe, because I have a lot of friends. Like, I mean, we are in the business. We have a lot of, our network is huge, right? I mean, one of my friends of high school, he was at Stellantis. It was one of the chief engineers in the platform design, and he went to China, and they did the Iveco, which is the light trucks, the light commercial vehicles. And so Luca, and I called Luca, and I said, hey, Luca, can we do something? Can we electrify Lancia? Because they wanted to kill Lancia, which and I repeat, it's Lancia and not Lancia or whatever else Americans and
I
German
do know that
and
personally.
yeah, so it's Lancia. So I said, let's turn Lancia into the Italian Tesla. Okay, we can do it. Okay, so everything I have tried, even if I was introduced by very good friends that tried to help me, when it came to the top management, to Mr. Marchione, it was a no. All the time it was a no. So what happened then? I said, okay, I have to do something to have an income, right? So I decided to, because Fiat in Italy and in Europe, they were not interested in bringing the 500e to Europe. So I said, okay, I'm going to do it myself. And this is when I started Scuderia E, right? And Scuderia E was meant to import, transform, because the rules in the US are different from the rules in Europe. So just the blinkers and the way if you have not the CE sign on the belt, then you have to change the belt, because it has, even the belt is basically the same retaining belt, right? The same safety belt. It has to have the CE tag. This is another chapter word talking about the European regulation that sometimes are just nuts. So I had to do all this transformation by myself, with my team, with the people that worked, and then I asked an engineer that was working on the battery pack of the Karma, Peter Gordon. I said, Peter, would you help me to develop a new battery pack for the Fiat 500? Because here in Europe, 24 kilowatt hours of battery and no DC charging. We have cold winters. It's not California, we have cold winters. We have lots of mountains, and you simply don't go far with 24 kilo. I wanted at least double the capacity. So I found a very funny combination with a company in Europe, which is known for the electric drillers, called Hilti, Hilti, Hilti. So Hilti, by the way, Hilti is based. It's nestled between Austria and Switzerland, and they are in Liechtenstein. So the Hilti is a family name. So Hilti is a company and a family based in Liechtenstein. And because of friends, I used to be a ski racer, alpine ski racer, and I was never really very successful, but I was okay. And it happened that I knew a lot of the really good ones, like Mark Girardelli and Andreas Wenzel, and so on. Which were my friends. Okay, we continued to stay in touch over time. So Andreas is a little bit older than me, and Mark is a little bit younger, so I'm in the middle, and I have still these contacts. And then Andreas Wenzel says, oh, I know a guy that works for Hilti, and maybe they're interested in financing you the development of the battery, because I know that they were trying to do some battery packs for electric vehicles. I say, oh, that's good. And this is how then Peter Gordon came to Europe, and he stayed here, and then he was traveling between Italy and Liechtenstein at Hilti. And we have designed, can you imagine, with very, very little capital. I mean, today you need millions and millions to design a new battery pack, right? And we did it with like €500,000 in total, but everyone was doing a pro bono. That means that Hilti said, you just put Hilti on your car, on your Fiat 500, my own, that I was using to drive around. You just put Hilti, and you just promote our brand, and we are fine. And then I was working with an electric company from Austria that wanted to promote electric mobility. So I put the stickers of them. It went all perfectly. I went to a company in Germany that was designing the software for the CCS, for the the charging combined system, which is the standard we have in Europe. CCS2, you have CCS1, and the Americans have CCS1, we have CCS2. So it's a type 2, and then combined you have DC charging capabilities. But DC charging means that you have to develop the software, because you have the handshake when you go to the high power charging system. You have to go through a very specific software where you have this handshake, where the car is recognized, and then the charger knows how much power it can give, and all that. So we have developed everything with almost no money. And this German company gave us the whole thing, the whole software, the whole controllers, and everything that we needed to make the Fiat 500 capable of CCS charging. So we could think about in 2016, we had a Fiat 500 electric with more than 50 kilowatt hours of battery pack, which could charge at 100 kilowatt of at 400 volt and 100 kilowatt of power. So we could do like a 10 to 80% in like 15-20 minutes on this car. So all this developed in house, and then I started to sell, to import from California, modify and sell the cars. And then in 2018, 2019, finally, Fiat said, "Oh, we have the new Fiat 500 coming," which was, with a bit of battery pack, a complete new car, by the way, a complete new platform, et cetera, et cetera. And then I couldn't compete. Simply, I couldn't compete anymore because my car was a transformed gray import, and you had the manufacturer itself with something official, which would give you the warranty and the service and all that to a better price. And I was far too expensive, so I had to give up. And then COVID struck. Okay, so that was when I finally decided to do completely something different,
It
which
sounds
is,
like perhaps Marchione tried to cut you off
yeah,
on the 500E supply just so he would stop losing so much money.
yeah, yeah, exactly.
You mentioned COVID, and clearly through that phase with the 500E, suddenly everything was shut down. You couldn't travel, and with a business that was based somewhat in U.S. as well as Europe across a couple of different countries, it was surely really challenging. So what did you do during this quiet time? If you couldn't import cars anymore for the 500E, what did your engineers do?
Initially, we were like everyone on the planet. We were simply petrified by the situation we never had in our lives before. I mean, I when I stay longer than 2 weeks in the same on the same spot, I'm getting nervous because I'm used to travel all my life. I spent years and years and years in different countries in the world, lived basically in almost every continent, and then suddenly we it was early March, and our prime minister said that we're having a lockdown for 2 months. We couldn't even leave our homes unless you had a dog. So and I had the luck, and I'm lucky enough that I have a dog. On WhatsApp, I created a group, a WhatsApp group with all my engineers and designers and partners, a dozen people, and I called it uh, Progetto Hypercar. Progetto Hypercar. Project Hypercar, right? And it was just basically the intention was so that we have something to do. We had every day, we had a Zoom call at 6 p.m. So we had this basically 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. So this 2 hours where we start having a fantasy initially about what we could design, how the car should look, and so we started. It was like just making something up, just to not get nuts in this time where we were not doing anything and we were just watching Netflix all day or whatever. And then when COVID was finally over, we decided to do our first show car. So the first one was a model. It was smaller than the actual model, and then we decided to have a show car, which we did, and then we presented shortly after that, and then work on the whole project, the powertrain, and everything it takes, and then pitching to get more money. So we have invested already a lot of time, a lot of money, and would like to be able to get into the production finally this year. And one of the reasons I was in China, and I'm just back, as you know, I'm just back. I came back yesterday. Was that I was talking with a series of companies, a series of Chinese big corporations in Beijing and in Shanghai, and also there is another project that I am deeply involved, which for the moment nobody knows, but because you told me that this is going to be aired in about 2 weeks, and I can say it, which is a very special scooter that we are designing with former BMW engineers, and it's a three wheeler, which has no need to wear a helmet because it has a roll bar. Is basically what 25 years ago BMW developed at the C1 scooter. So what we have done is a three-wheeler C1, and of course electric with a battery pack in very low, and then the roll bar and the seat very well protected. So you need the seat belt, no helmet, and this is the other project that I'm running in parallel. So, and the reason why I'm telling you is because it's going to be aired at the end of March, and therefore I can say it, because right now officially I couldn't say it, but at the end of March will be okay to talk about it.
This will remain a secret with you and me until everybody else listens.
I think this is plus minus what I have done in the last so many years.
It's highly varied. There's certainly a consistency. There's a red thread that follows through everything. But I love how you've pursued these different opportunities regardless of the geography.
I feel well everywhere, John, like you. I mean, and we were talking before we went on recording. It's part of our culture, because being raised in a hybrid, I call it a hybrid culture, where you have influence. My mother being Austrian and my father being Italian, and my wife being German, and having spent many years in the US and in Germany, in France, in Africa, and so on and so forth. I think this makes you a better man, a better person. In German, Mensch, and besser Mensch. Okay, better human, because you see that something is good in one country, and coming back from China, I was, by the way, this morning I had a coffee with a friend. He said, "So, how would you describe in China?" I said, "Well, it's my impression is that they are, from technological standpoint, from some advancement of society, etc., they're probably 20 years ahead somehow from Europe at least." But I think they're smart leadership. They have a very very smart leadership, because they most people think that the Communist Party is a party. It's not a party. It's not a party. It is an assemble of managers, top managers, which is a very tiny part of the global population of China, which is 1.4, maybe close to 1.5 billion people right now. So it's a very tiny part. It's an elite that you have access to this elite if you're good. What I can say, what I can see is that they took the best of capitalism and the best of communism and blended. It's the only country where you see, I haven't seen a country in the entire planet that has this blend of total. You might think that it is completely impossible that communist and capitalism could live together, right? Well, the Chinese did it, and I think part of this is that China exists since 4,000 years. They have a culture that goes back 4,000 years. Okay. And I think this is the strength of China, that are capable, because they, through the 4,000 years, they had up and downs. Then they have the Mongols coming in, and then they had the Westerns, they had the Japanese, and then the Russians, etc., etc. But they were always capable of getting back and rise. On Sunday, I was visiting Xiaomi. So 3 years ago, nobody knew that this tech company making smartphones and making TVs and making heating device and vacuum cleaners and washing machines, you know. So, what is Xiaomi? Xiaomi is Dyson, Apple, and Tesla together, and they do it in such a fast pace. Um, I was able to get into the showroom where they just presented the Xiaomi SU7 Ultra, and believe me, a $70,000 car with 1,500 horsepower, with such a performance, 350 kilometers an hour of top speed, packaged in a family car where 5 people can fit easily. Well, this is something I have never seen in my entire entrepreneurial life. That somebody coming out from nothing within 3 years develop a car at such high level. That's their first car. I'm sincerely convinced that if we have a chance, we Western, we want to have a chance of being able to compete, is by uh, getting to work with them together and not banning them with the tariffs, etc., etc., and isolating ourselves. What happened is that we isolate ourselves. So it happens what the communists did in the 70s, in the 80s, through the beginning of the 90s, when the product they had, uh, as half German, you remember the Trabant in the
Yes, of
DDR,
course, of
right?
course.
So in West Europe we had the Volkswagen Golf, right? And in the East they had the Trabant. So you took the Trabant next to the Golf and said, "What is the thing?" It's like 20, 30 years behind, right? So my fear is that if we continue to put up this kind of fight, this tariff fight, is that we are becoming the new communists, in the sense that we want to block the others to coming and show us how things could be done.
I also want to just go back to a point you made earlier to tie it back with what you're saying now. With the 4,000 year history of China and the way that the Communist Party works in terms of planning, they take the long view. They don't take the quarterly view. And tying it back to what you said about the investors were expecting from Fisker and pushing it to IPO and pushing to get their investment back, they were looking for the short term gain. They were looking for the short term return. And there's this dichotomy between the short term and the long term view, which one is more effective. And you can argue that when you want to make big systemic societal or technological changes, you really should take more the long term view, not the quarter by quarter view.
Absolutely, and I told you earlier about um, when I was traveling between Shanghai and Beijing. I could have taken an airplane, and then I said, "Wait a minute, why should I take an airplane? I know there is this bullet train, so let me see." So by using WeChat, because when you're there, you need to have WeChat on your smartphone, and WeChat is not just an app; it's a platform. From WeChat, you can do anything. You can do the payment, you can order something, you can buy a ticket or reserve a restaurant or a hotel, whatever. So I open up WeChat and I go under transportation, and then there is train, there is bus, whatever. So it's all seamless. So from the hotel room where Didi picks you up, Didi is their Uber. So Didi brings you for very little money, an extreme efficient service, brings you to the airport or to the railway station, whatever. So we decided, together with my other partner, we decided to take the bullet train. And And the distance between Shanghai and Beijing is the same like from where I live in Bolzano, which is up north close to the Austrian border, and Sicily, Palermo, same distance. And if everything goes in a perfect way, if I'm lucky, there is no delay, etc., it takes me 11 hours to go by train with the fastest train, with the fastest option. It takes me 11 hours from Bolzano to go down to Palermo. Same distance in China, 4.5 hours at a fraction of the 4.5 hours at the fraction of the price, with speed over 200 miles an hour, 350 kilometers an hour, and just 3 stops, only in the 3 major cities that are long, 3 stops. And needless to say, it was on time by the minute when we started, and on time by the minute when we have arrived. So, absolutely stunning. And yes, of course, there is a lot of control when you, first of all, when you arrive at immigration, they take a picture of you, they register your passport and everything. So you're in the system. So when you go to the station, whatever you take the train or whatever, there is a pre-check, but they very quickly. It's very, very quickly. And then they recognize, face recognition, recognize you. And then the gates open and then you get to the train. There is a lot of surveillance. That's for sure. I mean, you see cameras everywhere. So I'm sure that if the Chinese government would look up what did Gianfranco Pizzuto the 8 days that he was in China, they can for sure tell every minute when I went from the hotel to the restaurant, from the restaurant to visit the business, to have the business meeting, to the train station, etc., etc. I'm sure they would be able to. So you certainly better behave, because that's, I think, also one of the reasons why there is virtually no crime. I mean, you can leave everything open, and you can have your wallet on the restaurant, and then you go to the restroom, and then you come back and your wallet is still there. It's because Big Brother is watching you.
Well, thank you very much, Gianfranco, for joining today. Really interesting conversation. Just to understand what you've been doing. I'm really excited about your Fulminea project and love to see when that is going to actually be on the road. I'll have to keep following that. And I'll put a link to your website into the podcast notes so that everybody else can find that as well.
Yeah, well, thank you very much, John. It was an honor and a real pleasure to be part of your podcast episode, and I look forward to see what's coming when you're going to be online with that.
Thank you very much to all the listeners for tuning in today. Next week, we'll have another episode on the Auto Ethnographer, and we hope you join in at that time. In the meantime, keep on driving. Thank you for joining us on today's journey. Please remember to like and subscribe to the Auto Ethnographer and leave us a rating or comment. For more information, visit our website at auto-ethnographer.com. You can also follow on Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn.